friends. Welcome to the Ramble. I'm Pastor Jeff from here at Restore Church and the Ramble with my good friends.
I'm Sophie.
And
my name is Drax the Destroyer. No, I'm playing. My name is Pastor Jacob. First
You know
name
what?
Pastor, last name Jacob.
If I picked a superhero for you, I would be okay with having you be Drax. I'd be down with that.
We're gonna Drax Sklounce.
Never mind.
Only the real ones know what I'm talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about,
What
but
are you talking about?
I don't think I like it. So what is the topic for this episode?
Yeah, we jumping right into it.
Let's get it.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So we're talking about being in full-time ministry versus having your vocation outside of ministry,
Yes.
but that being your area of ministry.
Oh, that's good. That's good. And you said we're jumping right into it. Is there anything fun you want to talk about before we get right into it?
No, usually we just have like some camaraderie and
Yeah.
fun time, and then I do a really cool transition statement. But
All right. What's your cool did you have a cool transition statement prepared?
it's all on the fly because
All
like
right.
I don't know what we're gonna. I'm not a prophet or anything.
Did I? No, I told you guys. I had somebody tell me vision the other day,
Yeah.
and I had him write it down for me, and he mailed it to me the other day, and
Wow.
it makes me so happy.
Wow.
It's just amazing. But so he's a prophet. You're not, but he is.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about his prophecies.
Yeah.
And that'll be a fun episode for everybody who's like listening right now, and they're like, I am really confused about prophecy and spiritual gifts because nobody ever talks about somebody actually prophesying over them.
What if we actually talk? What if we change the topic
Just talk about prophecy.
in spiritual gifts? What if we just change it up?
Let's come more prepared for that one.
Okay.
So, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about prophecy. You and me will just interview Sophie rapid fire, and she'll have to do
Yeah.
everything off the cuff.
All right.
Sounds good. I'm so prepared.
All right, Sophie. What is the second baptism of the Holy Spirit?
I don't know.
And how many are there? Is there
How many
2 or
baptisms are
7?
there?
I thought there was one.
Do I have to speak in tongues to be saved?
Probably.
Oh,
Just kidding.
And how many tongues?
what kind of
100?
tongues? Are we talking like burning tongues? Are we talking like
Tongue of fire over your head?
like lick a tongue or?
Yep.
Hey, anybody out there who's a Pentecostal, we love you guys, and and we'll talk about that someday, and it'll be a fun conversation.
Someday, somehow, we're gonna make it all right, but not right now.
Who's that?
Nickelback.
I thought that was
Great,
Nickelback.
great prophet,
The
Nickelback.
great prophet Nickelback.
Oh,
All right, so full-time ministry
Yeah.
versus full-time secular work, and also having a ministry on the side,
Sure.
That.
right?
Yeah.
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 So
Or your full-time secular job being your ministry, like
Ooh,
evangelizing in the workplace.
it's a good way of looking at it.
3 options.
Yeah. Let's just talk about all three.
Yeah.
All 3.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Let me just start off with a question.
okay.
How do I know if I am called to like full-time or part-time vocational ministry where I work for a church versus having a secular job and then doing ministry on the side, like let's say Daniel, where he does work and then he's our gospel community director and then ministers in his workplace? Like, how do I know whether I'm called to do full-time ministry, like work for a church, or whether I volunteer for a church and work on the side?
What a good question. And I'm really excited to talk about this. And full disclosure, we recorded an episode on this, and I think we got so laser focused on one side of the conversation that we weren't very gracious to the other side of the conversation.
Sure.
And so I'm sure a few people maybe caught that, and they're like, "Why did we delete it?" And it's because I just felt like we went so extreme on one side that we made the other side sound bad. And so I'm really excited to hear it, to see what this conversation turns into, especially knowing where so many of our friends are at.
Mm-hmm.
Like you guys probably all think of a handful of people that are really close to us who are all struggling with this right now. They're like, I know one guy who almost rage quit his job recently because he's like, I just hate that my job keeps me so busy and I just want to do ministry.
Right.
And then I have one friend who's like, I love ministry, but I love working in the secular world, and I feel like I'm being ripped in two. I have,
Like a lion.
like a lion in the hands of Samson, right? And just like that. And
Too
hey,
bad the sound effects don't work for that, man, because that would have been perfect.
yeah. See, I told you
We
guys the
need we
sound.
need the SpongeBob rip my pants.
I told you the
That's what
sound.
we need.
I told you the soundboard was a good idea. And then I know for some friends they're just confused. They're like, I just don't know. I feel like I'm supposed to do ministry at my workplace, but what does that even mean, right? Do you guys feel like you know a lot of people and just like
Sure.
scattered all over there?
Yeah. I mean, I could think of like 10 people that I know who love ministry, but like there's a few tensions where maybe they don't know if full-time ministry is for them. Maybe like the ministry can't afford to hire them. Or maybe they like really, really love their job and love what they do. And they're just like, I just don't know.
Yeah. So how do you know if you're called, right?
Yeah, that's the question. How do I
How do
how do I know if I'm called to leave my secular job and pursue ministry?
what I'm collecting some ideas, but what thoughts do you guys have? Sophie, what thoughts do you have?
I think few people are called into full-time ministry.
Ooh.
Um, and
Vocationally,
right,
not with
yes, called into vocational ministry. Um, and I think that, I mean, full-time ministry or vocational ministry is fun. It's a good and it's awesome. And I think that sometimes people like they're like, I want to do it because it's so fun and awesome. And they're like, it's the next step in growing my faith is to
mm,
be working at a church.
like there's a hierarchy and
Yeah.
they feel like there's a inferiority here and a
Yeah.
superiority up here.
Mhm.
Okay.
And
You're not making that claim, but you think that's how a lot of
I
people
think that's how
feel.
people feel.
Okay.
And I don't think, and that's not the case. Like, God calls everybody to different things, obviously, and gives different giftings to people to be effective in work vocationally or work um as a ministry at your secular job. But I think that what I've heard another pastor say about calling to vocational ministry is only do it if you can't do anything else.
Yeah, if you fail at everything else.
But not if you fail at everything else, but if it's all you're doing all the time.
Oh,
If
wait, so like if I sucked as a pizza delivery driver,
no,
I probably shouldn't do full-time ministry?
Yeah, so if
you probably should if you yes.
if you're
If
bad at one job, don't go to the other job.
if you're bad,
If
yes.
every single one of my jobs I was crappy at.
Yeah, don't think that means you're supposed to work at a church.
Why?
Because I'm terrible at everything. Now I'm gonna be great at ministry.
Uh-huh.
Oh. All right, guys, I gotta go.
Uh,
Huh.
Pastor Jacob, tell us how you got to restore church.
I
I was bad at everything.
uh I I actually completed my human biology degree.
Mhm.
Uh, and then I worked at Domino's Pizza. And then I worked at the church and I did insurance.
And insurance. There you go.
Yeah.
I I think a really important part of the answer is that so it's, I think it's good for us to ask this question, but I think we we want to ask the question to teach our listeners to not start with that question. Should my ministry be vocational or not vocational? I think you don't start with that question. It's a good question to ask, just to say, don't start with that question. And here's what I mean by that. Um, God's gonna God's gonna bless your faithfulness to him. Like you're gonna serve him with your whole life, right? You're gonna and it'll probably start out in the secular world. You're not gonna probably wake up one day and then just go, my whole life's changing. I'm just running away from everything I'm doing and I'm just gonna go to a full-time ministry job and boom. There'll probably be there'll if you are called to full-time vocational ministry, there's probably gonna be a season of transition or training, right? And you probably don't belong in a full-time vocational ministry until you have an established volunteer ministry, right? And so I don't want to feed into the narrative that you said of like, hey, there's
Yeah.
a hierarchy,
Mhm.
but you don't just skip one, say I'm unwilling to do the other one, and then go. Like I've never, and I know that's not what you said, but it's like you don't wake up one day and say like I never volunteered at my church, and now I'm gonna go be a pastor
Mhm.
of a whole church, and I'm gonna lead the whole church and be full time. It's like you're gonna find that sweet spot to serve Jesus, but also be willing to do the things that nobody wants to do.
Mm.
And I think having that like dual status in your local church wherever you're at, those are the somebody's got to silence their phone for their podcast. Someone's got to silence their
Hey,
laptop.
hey, listen. I think last time you had to do that too.
Hey, no, that episode got wiped, so I'm clear.
Oh man.
But does that make sense? I think the you need to start with having that dual role in a local church. Hey, there's going to be a ministry that I'm going to champion. I'm going to be the most reliable volunteer. If it doesn't exist, I'm going to help start it. I'm going to find my leadership. I'm going to volunteer like crazy and maybe a specialized role, and I'll be willing to be the person doing what needs done that few people want to do. If somebody's so cuz let's talk about from my perspective. I get to have the unique role of hiring a lot of people for vocational ministry, right? If somebody's going to get hired here, it's probably going to at least touch my desk, right?
Dude, I don't know it's dead. Like I killed it. Hold up. You keep talking. Keep talking.
But if somebody gets hired here, their hiring process will touch my desk. And I,
I'm so sorry.
man, it'd be funny if it's Pat's over there, you guys. It'd be funny if Pat's just over there texting and just
No,
scrolling in on Jacob.
it's the Fortnite boys. They're talking about
Oh,
the new update.
there you go. But like I don't want to hire somebody who's not willing to have already explored both of those. I'm like, well, hold on. I feel like you're probably deceived in some area of like your like what you should be doing with your life if you're not already doing ministry. And so my point in all that is say we don't need to start the question with do I go full time or vocational or staff or not staff. We just start with like, hey, am I living for Jesus where I'm at?
Mm.
And I think that's really the good starting point is having a ministry.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a first step that takes you to a second step. Is like then that ministry will take its own shape, right? It will be very clear that this ministry isn't feasibly a vocational ministry, or maybe it just logically doesn't make sense to be a vocational ministry, or and you can do that for a long time. Like my youth pastor is a full-time lawyer when I was growing up and a part-time volunteer youth pastor, and that was the most logical course of direction for his ministry, right? And so maybe it stabilizes as this just high capacity volunteer thing, or or it naturally becomes something where it's like, wow, it doesn't make sense for this not to be a job anymore. This is clearly a calling that becomes a vocation. So I think that first step is like, well, what's your ministry? Do you have one? Can you name it with a sentence? My ministry from God serving Jesus is insert fill in the blank, right? Now it's me, right? Or it's like, hey, my like, what is my ministry, and then like, at what capacity is that ministry? What do you guys think? Speak into that a little bit.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is really good. Like hmm. So if you have anything, I need to gather my thoughts for a second.
All these phones interrupting us,
I
derailing our trains.
I have a follow-up question, but it's not it's not adding to what you said, but it's a follow-up question of clarification.
Mm-hmm.
But I want Sophie to say anything if she's got anything first.
No, I agree with what you're saying. Like it makes sense to that makes sense as a good starting point to say if you're not already serving, if you're not already like really passionate about something in your local church, it doesn't make sense to jump into full-time ministry
Mm-hmm.
just to be in full-time ministry.
Yeah, it's like I think my church is cool
Yeah.
and it would be fun to work here, give me a
Mhm.
job versus
Mhm.
I've been doing this for Jesus and like my soul hungers and
Yeah.
thirsts to and I live and breathe for this thing now.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah. When you put it that way, that makes a lot of sense.
Like that's how I became a pastor.
Yeah.
I was like this volunteer youth pastor, volunteer young adult pastor. Nobody called me pastor back then. I just like was leading this, but I was pastoring
Mm.
and I couldn't stop. I couldn't like I'd be at my secular job. I had really great secular jobs. I got promoted. I'm like on the board on the verge of management here, or maybe taking over for my boss here when he retires, and like everything was so blessed. But then at the end of the day, I'm just like, I don't care how much money you pay me here. Like, the only role this job has in my life is to give me a cushy schedule so I can go do my ministry when I'm not here.
Mm.
And like I'm just like I can't climb the ladder here anymore because I don't want to lose the ability to pursue my ministry.
Mm.
I just like had this hunger and thirst for it, and I just like it's like falling in love.
Mm.
It's just like I gotta like one day I look at Brittany, I'm like I gotta marry this girl, and that's what I think like vocational devote your life to a ministry becomes.
Mm. Is is there an exception to the rule in so for me, I had never served in a church before.
Mm.
I had never served anywhere. And I text you and I'm like, "Hey dude, I think the Lord's calling me to ministry." And I mean, I was ministering to people outside of the church. I was going to a Bible study, but I mean, I wasn't doing ministry in the church in a volunteer, set. And then I show up to Restore Church and I'm like, okay, I need to get involved. I need to like be here. So I guess I did start serving in tech, but that was like right around the time that I started the pastoral residency. And then once I started that, like, I mean, I was just serving the church all the time. I mean, that's what I did. So like, I guess am I just like a rare exception to the rule, or is that like are there more exceptions?
Well, I mean, sure, like there has to be exceptions, right? God will do whatever God wants to do to fulfill God's purposes for God's glory
Mhm.
and praise him on high. We celebrate that, right? Um but you still had to go through some of those steps, right? Like I was really slow and cautious hiring you. I vetted you way more in the early stages than you think I did. Like I was testing you all the time, like and I think I felt like I saw a calling on your life.
Mm.
And so maybe I take that back. I don't think you were the exception to the rule because I think you getting into vocational ministry still happened through the local church. I still saw you serving in the local church along the way. You just had a you had a weirdly accelerated process, I think, of
Right.
the same process.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I guess that speaks some good language to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good. I think that's clear. Adds clarity though. Like it can happen really fast. I
Hmm.
think maybe the way I described it, it sounds like a really long, slow process. But it could happen rapidly, but it still maybe, in my opinion, and this is, I'm not quoting scripture as I explain this. I'm quoting like my experience in the way we would do it in our ministry context.
Sure.
But but it seems like that's the most helpful process to
Hmm.
set people up for success.
Yeah. 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 That's actually really, really good, really wise. It also shows, especially like you're willing to pick up a broom, bro. These things are durable. They're made by Sure. Built tough. They're
Good.
like Fords. Built tough. Ford tough. What
For
is it?
those
How does
people
that go?
whoever's listening on Spotify, I just about spilled my water all over my microphone here. Like I
Yeah.
was cheering. Cheers.
Don't break it, please.
That sound,
So,
did that pick up the sound?
yeah,
Good.
yeah, and vibrational frequencies. Um, yeah, I mean, it shows like you're willing to pick up a broom. I remember Royce's dad came to worship with us one Sunday. I think it was the weekend he got married,
Okay.
and you and him were talking, and I was just kind of standing, by your side because that's
Me and Royce, or me and Royce's dad?
you and Royce's dad,
Yeah.
because that's what I did. I was like, yeah, I'm a little puppy for the first couple months, and he said something along the lines of, yeah, if you want to be a pastor, pick up a broom,
Mm-hmm.
and
That clicked. That stuck with you.
yeah, it did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it shows that you're willing to put in the hard work. But going back to my original question, yeah, I think you did a really good job clarifying, like, this shouldn't be the first question that you ask as someone who is just like starting in ministry or like just like starting going to church. But let's say we have someone who does have their ministry. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is my thing. I am serving Jesus by taking care of people in need through foster ministry or through a homeless ministry, or I am serving faithfully in a youth ministry. When does it become apparent to them that God is telling them to like leave their full-time secular job and pursue this as
Yeah.
like as not just as a job, but as a calling and as a career? um like when did that happen for you? How did you know that the Lord was leading you to? Like, you said that you just had desire for it,
Mm-hmm.
and like you couldn't, no matter what they would pay you, like it was still just a ministry funding job.
Mm-hmm.
So when was the decision made in your heart, or like when did you hear God say, like, okay, Jeffrey, you're done with this whole working at the county?
Yeah. So there's that's such a good, thoughtful question. There's so much to unpack. I want to throw Sophie in here really quick though. Sophie, do you remember the three types of jobs I throw out there for people? I think that's really good context. Tell people the three types of jobs available to them.
Um,
See
a
if
ministry funding job.
define it. There's so that, because we're kind of jumping the ship to go from secular work to full-time vocational ministry work, and
Yeah.
there's an in-between phase.
Well, I'm saying like full-time or vocational,
Yeah.
not purposefully, like there's the one jump, but yeah, there is that. I'm just saying, like, going from ministry or secular job to vocational job or ministry job.
Yes. So when do you make the jump
Yeah.
to just start as a vocation without the nuance of the different levels in between?
Well, I mean, there might be levels in between, but like that's still cutting back on your job. Explain it, and then we'll have a discussion. All right, Sophie, you got it.
Get it, Sophie?
Okay,
Get it.
a ministry funding job is when you have a job in secular world, but it's not your passion. It's just there to pay the bills while you do your passion, which is ministry, with your volunteer time.
And it makes sense to live your life that way
And
with
that
where you're
makes
at.
sense in your season. Yes. And then the ministry,
Paid volunteer.
No.
no. I don't know what they're called, but then the vocational ministry is when you're paid to do your ministry
Mm-hmm.
job and that you're passionate about. But then there's also your job is your ministry,
It's like your
where
mission field.
your mission field. Yeah, that where you just work a secular job, but you're ministering to your people there. And
Yeah.
that's your passion, what you're passionate about.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the in between, like the missional funding job, you would rather not be there, but your life situation, it makes more sense to be there. Maybe it limits your ministry, but it helps you take care of your family. It helps you do this or that, because right now there's just no open door for that full ministry that you want to pursue. And it's getting you from point A to point B. Then the second one is like, it's not hostile towards your ministry. It's really open to your ministry, and it is your mission field. Then the other one is like, hey, this is it. And so the question's really hard for me, what you're asking, is because like there's a version of life where somebody could just wake up and apply for a job somewhere across the country, and that job already exists. and I think I want to leave room for that situation, but like I don't build our culture around that situation because what we're about is raising people up. And so it's for us it's usually entrepreneurial and like we want to raise somebody to build something that doesn't currently exist. Does that make sense? That I want to make sure that makes sense to our listeners.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so like when I think of it, I think there is room where somebody would be saying, "I want to name a random ministry for me." So if we name a random ministry,
Transportation ministry.
transportation, yeah, good transportation ministry, and so it's like person A, we'll call her Tori, in this hypothetical made up situation.
Interesting.
This hypothetical situation. There's a woman named Tori, Victoria, if you will,
Oh,
and she like she works in the secular world, and she's like, hey, like this isn't my jam anymore. This type of workplace isn't my jam anymore. And she could wake up and be like, but I'm super passionate about transportation ministry. And she could be like, well, where I'm at, there's no opportunity to do full-time transportation ministry. And there's a version of life where she can go to indeed.com or whatever job source and look for transportation ministry
Mm,
opportunities, and she could just go from boom to boom, one to the other.
mm,
But I think usually should your ministry is probably already attached to or should be attached to where you're residing within the church that you're flourishing in. Now maybe you're in a church where you're not flourishing, and that's a whole other conversation. And then it's like you're probably like God builds the body up. And so it's like as the church develops and grows or shifts from one season to another, he's probably going to raise up somebody within that congregation with a passion that's a missing piece of the puzzle, right? And then there's this fullness of the body of Christ that way where it's like Tori wakes up, she's like, my church probably needs a transportation ministry because there's people that we need to minister to where I'm already at. And it seems to make more sense to build it there than to say, well, the church needs it. My church doesn't have it. Forget you guys. I'm going to go across the country to do it there. And there's still nuance. Like God could just like put a city on your heart. You like woke up one day and you're like Albuquerque and you go there. I just think that's like you said before, there are exceptions, sure. I just think those are outliers and it probably should happen in the local church. Is that helping with your question?
n-
No.
no, not
I'm explaining why the question's hard to answer because there's so many.
yeah, yeah. There's so yeah. I will concede. There's a lot of nuance to like deciding or figuring out whether or not pursuing a job in ministry is what the Lord is calling you to.
All right, I got an answer for you.
And okay,
Sophie, do you have an answer though?
absolutely.
All right, so I do have an answer for you. Um, oh, I forgot it. It was so good too, man. I had like a 3 point Baptist boy answer for you too. How
man,
did you know?
that would have been so good.
How did you know, man? Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Welcome to the Ramble, where it is really off the cuff. Well, we're gonna talk about this until we find an answer to the question. Man, it was so
And
good
that's
too.
within the next 10 minutes.
All right, 10 minutes to find an answer. How do you know if you make the switch? Um, how do you answer your own question?
There was opportunity for me.
Okay.
Um, I knew one way or another that God had instilled in my heart a
Mm.
passion for ministry. And I just knew that God was calling me to be a pastor from how he transformed my life so quickly and radically to the way in which I was able to understand the scripture and getting excited about it and getting excited about talking with people about Jesus and discipleship. And I knew that if the door wasn't open with you, that there would be a door elsewhere.
Hmm.
Um, you know,
I got my answer. It's gonna make it complicated. This will be fun.
restore was open and willing to raise up someone and develop them. But and I didn't really have any ties to just Yankton. I just knew like, okay, like I feel like God's closing the door on medical school and on like the whole higher education, secular higher education, but yet he's opening up this new door that is completely new and different, and like it felt like all of the pieces were falling into place.
Yeah. So here's my answer. I lost. I said, I think how do you know? There's usually going to be somebody who sees it in you before you see it in yourself.
Mhm.
I think almost every time that I've seen somebody get called to like a vocational ministry, and even like our we have a robust volunteer leadership team who aren't vocational.
Mhm.
They're not staff leaders, but they're definitely like not to again not to indulge in like a hierarchy of you're a better or worse Christian, but there is an intensity to the calling that creates a level of ownership or leadership, right? And in that, there's all of our leaders. A lot of every leader I've personally appointed, I saw it way before they did, and often I had to wait until they could also see it too. Brian in our pastoral residency program, I saw it months before he did, and I was kind of getting annoyed at him not seeing it. So finally, one day I pointed it out to him, and he finally started to catch up. He's like, "Oh, I'm taking some liberty with his story here, but um, when I said I saw this, I think it gave him language for what he felt. He's like, I've been feeling this, but I didn't know that that was calling. I didn't know that was God telling me to do something. And I think there is a danger to the emotional sensationalism of society today. Like, I woke up and I felt this. I feel like I'm supposed to do this, and then, but if nobody in your life who has a gift of wisdom and understanding or maturity in their faith, if none of them see it in you, uh, then I think there is need for caution, not to just say, well, someone else will give me a chance, so I'm just gonna ditch the people I know and love or who love me and then go find somewhere else to do it. So I think it's gonna start with somebody's gonna recognize it. I recognized it in you, uh,
When?
long time ago. But that first year when you left and went to college, I was like, dude, this guy has it. And then you went to college and then you came back and you're like, dude, I was crushing at college and then I wasn't crushing it at college. And we kind of had this really, really fun time of like rebuilding you back up after that college season. But before you left, I was like, I think he's called to ministry. And I've got, I've been able to, and maybe it's just my gift. Maybe I'm just good at recognizing it. But I had people do that to me too. Like my pastor and youth pastor told me I would be a pastor before I dared dream it. Royce basically like prophesied it over me while we're driving up Chalkstone Hill when we're in our early 20s. Like, man, you are gonna be a pastor. You're gonna do like everybody saw it in me, and I was just like, I don't know. I think I'm just an okay volunteer Bible study teacher, not a vocational pastor. And so I think that's where it's gonna start. And then I do think that then you go back to where we first started, and it's like, well, then just do it whether it's your vocation or not. Do it whether it's your vocation or not. Like be that person
Mm.
until it has to become something more
Out of necessity. Yeah.
out of necessity. Like that's how Brittany did Kidsman, right? She's like, all right, I'm gonna volunteer. She absolutely crushed it, and she took our 10-person kids ministry department into 100 kids ministry department. And along the line, we're like, ooh, this doesn't work without a staff person. And so she didn't try to make herself a job. And I think that's what's really important.
Mm.
Her goal wasn't to get herself a job. What was her goal? Her goal was just to be faithful in her ministry. And then
Mm.
boom, it happened.
Oh, that is a word from the Lord right there. Okay. Man, that was good. The goal isn't to make a job out of your ministry, but to be faithful to God.
And he'll figure it out.
Yeah, wow.
Now we didn't cover anything we talked about in our scrapped episode
Good,
about
that's
like
okay.
the workplace as the ministry, and I think we should talk about that. But what are we doing on time?
We are at 40, we're at like 35 minutes.
All right, what's our closing goal?
30.
All right, so we're out of time. That's it.
Yeah, we'll do a part
This
2.
is going to be part 2 to be continued.
Yeah, dude.
Hey guys, welcome to the Ramble. Like, comment, subscribe. But first, Sophie, do you have any closing thoughts?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Make something up.
No.
Say something.
Okay.
All right. All right, but hey guys, we want you to like, we want you to comment. We want to hear like where this was helpful, or what we also want to hear is what questions. I think conversations like this sometimes give you questions you didn't know you had. And I think we had clarity in one area with this type of conversation, but then it's like the clarity just led you to a deeper trail of questions. And so we want to hear from you. We want to help you. And if you're part of our faith family or a local church somewhere else, like let's get you in your ministry. Let's absolutely do it, because it is amazing, man. Sophie, there's so many things I wanted to hear from you that we didn't get to. I'm so excited for part 2. Closing thoughts, Pastor Jacob.
No. I don't have any closing thoughts.
All right. Peace out.
Peace. Sophie, say bye.
Oh, sorry. Bye.